podcast. Our hosts for today are me, Ibu, and Talha, and our guests are Dishti in IB2 and May in IB1. This is part 2 on a discussion on feminism, and if you enjoyed our episode, our previous episode, you're bound to enjoy this one even more. Hope you enjoy.
So I was just thinking of a scenario, right? If, for example, if we are all business owners, right? And the level below us, there are six positions, let's say. And let's say we've hired 5 of them and they're all men. Would you make it a effort to hire a woman as your 6th? And why or why not?
I think if it was me, if speaking for myself, and if the 5 are men, and if the 6th one is, I wouldn't go out of my way to make. So if there's a man and a woman applying for the same job, and they're as qualified as each other, then of course I would pick the female. But if, let's say, the man is more qualified, then it wouldn't be. I wouldn't, because I don't want to. It's because it's an unfair disadvantage to the man if I pick the female over him just because of the fact that she's female, not because of how much better his degree is.
Yeah. I would hire a woman, but not because I believe it's morally wrong that there's 6 men. I think it's fine for there to be 6 men or even 6 female in a certain job. I would hire a woman because if I were to be if my consumers were who I'm selling to was the entire population, men and women, I would place a slightly higher value on there being a woman, because I know that no matter how hard a man tries, we won't be able to understand women. And I think it's important. No, we won't be, right? And so you kind of need that different thinking, I feel like. But not because of moral issues. I would do it for a business issue. A business, thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, depending on what this business is, what product we're selling, I would want like representation from both sexes. Just because you need to get like just from like a purely business viewpoint, you need like a perspective from the perspective of all the consumers that you're selling to. You know, like, okay, like if it was a product which was like just for men, like completely just for men, 6 men, okay, like whatever, that's fine. If it's a product that we're selling to both men and women, then yeah, I'd want like a balance between, or like at least a woman like represented within that group.
Yeah.
And May, if you were the business owner?
No, yeah, I think it's like Dishti said, it depends what you're selling, obviously. Like, again, if you're just going to sell to all females, the chance of the man being like I'd rather have an all-female like group, because it's easier to sell. You know, you want to sell to your target audience. If your business is going to help sell more, obviously in a business mindset, then obviously you want to do that for your business.
Yeah, I think you would have needed to give us more details to get an accurate answer. But as we're on the pay gap topic, another big topic that comes along with pay gap is the sports pay gap between males and females. That seems to be very big recently. I was hearing about the sports pay gap issue between football teams in the US and in Australia as well. That seemed to be quite big. And to ask May, do you think that there is actually an issue with the sports pay gap, or no?
Yeah, I think there definitely is. And I think, I mean, I'm not 100% sure about football. I don't really know much about football, but I think there's definitely, I think there was one in the tennis for the male and female professional tennis players that like, that it's obviously clear that they're both genders are great sports players, but it's no question that the females are being paid a lot less. And it's like, why? They're both at the same standard, they're both at the same competitions, they're both winning the same amount of things. So what's the reason for women to be paid less when men are being paid?
I think the level of competition is much different. Let's say, for example, let's use the sport of netball, which is a lot there. I don't think there's like 2 or 3 female male teams in netball. But if we compare that to, let's say, a sport that females are a lot better in at whatever level than males, females do get actually paid a lot more. And let's say in football or in basketball, even percentage-wise, because in sports you get paid in how much viewers you bring in. Of course, that's how the companies that organize these events earn money. And in the America, for example, basketball games, more males, more audiences go to watch high school games than the WNBA. Now, that's not because the WNBA players are females. I think that's due to the fact that male games generally tend to be more interesting due to that sport being more accustomed or more geared towards how a male is. But I
Yeah.
think, to say, speaking football, females get paid percentage-wise in earning more than males.
Yeah, I think it's everything is to do with how much audience do you get, how many eyes do you get watching, and just the nature of our biology. Normally, generally, people men's sports, especially when it's like have high physical needs. So it's a like I'll just use the example of basketball and WNBA. Male basketball players earn way much more than the women players, and there has been a protest in the WNBA, in the women's NBA, that we're not getting paid enough. But I don't really understand that protest too much, because the NBA, the male NBA is earning so much more money, so they have more money to spend on the players. I don't, it's not always how much effort you put. It's not always how good you are at working, because if that was the case, the construction worker would be earning, a lot of money. It's not effort. It's how much, how many people can do that. And that's to do with how many people watch you. But then also there's I know for a fact, the US women's soccer team, they bring more revenue to the US Football Federation than the men, but still the men are being paid more. I think that's the problem. I think in most cases,
US football team, in that particular case, it's because the male team participates in more international competition than females do. They don't particularly bring in just the money from the US Football Federation. Instead, they have way more sources of revenue due to how much more competition they face.
That could be, but I think because from my understanding in football, the wages depend on, for national team wages, depend on the country's national authority, the whatever it's called. So if the women are bringing more money in, which is what I read, then how can you be paying them less?
Yeah, right? 100%. That would not be okay unless if all other circumstances were.
Yeah.
Forgiven. And Dishti?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Ibrahim is saying. I don't really have much more to add. That was my logic when this whole case was happening. So yeah.
Sure, because also May touched upon this tennis player fact, and I've also heard about that and you said that they're playing at the same level. In fact, actually, Serena Williams is the best female. Like, she's not only the best female tennis player, she's a very well-renowned female sports person across the world. But when they did a study comparing her body and play style to the guys, 150 of the top tennis players will beat her in a game, male top tennis players. By statistics.
But I think if you're gonna go off what Ibrahim said about the audience and the money you're bringing in, tennis, female and male, is both very popular. I think there might be a slight difference in audience, numbers for males and females, but I think they do bring in quite a similar amount of money. So the fact that she's being paid, if you're taking Serena Williams, the fact that she's being paid a lot less is questionable. Why is that happening?
Yeah, sure, but because is she being paid less in terms of by the tennis federation, or by terms of how well renowned she is? Because athletes generally, their majority of their earnings is revenues, not from playing, but instead with what they get sponsored with the biggest brands they get sponsored. What Ronaldo has, $1 billion sponsorship because of how well known he is around the world. But I think when we're comparing tennis player to a tennis player in terms of how many people they bring in the particular competition, I think it's similar between male and female what they get paid. That's what I was trying to say.
I think Serena earns more if you include that. I think she's one of the top Nike athletes.
Yeah,
especially for tennis, at least. Yeah.
So now I want to go on to because we don't have much time left, but quickly touch upon the idea of this new word that I recently heard, patriarchy. what I think, I don't know what jik means in very exact terms, but what I understood of it, and if you guys could enlighten me even more, is the idea that there's males across the world in power positions that are not allowing females, or that are discouraging females to have those power positions, and are in fact encouraging the representation of females.
From what I understand, it's like a system where it makes it easier for men to progress, and I'm pretty sure that's what patriarchy refers to. And if that is the case, if it is easier for men to progress, or if it is easier if they discriminate against women, then it's wrong, of course.
Do you think, my question would be to Dishti particularly, in fact, actually, do you think that that is the case?
That the patriarchy exists?
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I do think that we, as a world, live in a society where men are the ones who hold the power. And this comes at a disadvantage not only to women, but also to men, in the form of like toxic masculinity and the idea of men having to be the ones in power. And it leads to what we were talking about before, with like the unequal opportunity and the lack of like fair outcomes in our lives. So yeah.
Okay. I think because with the idea of patriarchy, to me seems a little outreached, if that's the word I want to use. It seems a little too extreme, because I don't think there's a couple of men, or there's men in general, or because they hold the position of power. That's because of historical reasons, of course, that existed. But I don't think anymore that I think it's equally as hard as it is for Dishti to become the CEO of Amazon as it is for me to become the CEO of Amazon, or it's equally as hard as Ibu to own Repton or to be a teacher at Repton as it is for May to be a teacher at Repton. I think
I disagree.
Sure.
I think we still there's a lot of gender bias, and like the idea of gender roles, and the fact that like a man should be the one in power, and women shouldn't. I think that still plays like a big part in our society today, and that like.
Thing is, I don't think that exists anymore, because I don't think either me or Ibu, or in undeveloped countries, that I would very much agree with you to a certain extent, but especially in the developed countries, I don't think that exists anymore, because we're educated and we realize the fact that the discrimination does not lead to anything good. And I think that because speaking in terms of how hard it is to make a certain position or to get somewhere, I think that's very much equal now.
And we can only talk from our own experience. And from my own experience, and with the other women in my family, I don't think there's any pressure on me to get a position of power compared to them, or for me to have a career while they don't. I think the main reason, the different decision is, I think, having a family and having a baby, and that if a couple decides to do that, just naturally puts a bigger burden on the woman. But I don't think people are forced, or even, I guess there might be some societal influence to encourage women to have babies. What do you guys think? You think there's some expectation to have a family?
Yeah. I think that like, I mean, I'm Indian, so I guess I don't really come from like what we were talking about, like a fully developed country in terms of like feminism and like women's rights and everything. Like in my family, at least, I see that there's a lot more of a pressure on women to like I guess like start families and know all those like typical feminine things like cooking and cleaning and that kind of thing. Like for example, when I was 7 years old, I was expected to be like
Hi everyone, sorry for the little break here. What happened was that in the middle of our discussion, the Zoom meeting ended. So we had to restart it, and we'll jump back straight into it. However, the faces might be a bit arranged differently. But other than that, we'll get straight back into it.
Yeah, so I just feel like this idea of woman like taking on the stereotypical gender role of like of a woman like cooking, cleaning, you know, doing this, like they were definitely enforced on me a lot more than they were on my male cousins. Like when I was younger, I was expected to be cooking and cleaning. I see like my male cousins at the time and even now, like they weren't expected to do the same. And I know this is like a universal experience for like most women, especially women of color. So yeah, like in my personal experience, I think that women are expected to like, you know, go into that role of like starting a family, being a mother, being a wife. And it's, that thing is like less put upon men. Like the men in my family are less expected to like, you know, go start a family, like go be fathers, go be husbands. It's like, oh, like, you know, they can take as long as they want with their career and this and that. Whereas with women, it's like, you know, like, yeah, focus on your career and everything. But at the same time, like you are expected to like have a family and do all of those things, you know?
May, was it the same for you?
Yeah, I think even like for some people it's like quite subconscious, because I think if you were to see a man, for example, who didn't know how to cook or didn't know how to like do laundry and stuff, it wouldn't be as like, I think for a lot of people it wouldn't be as a surprise. They'd be like, oh, okay. But if you were to see a woman, she can't cook and she can't clean, it's more of a surprise. And I think that has been drilled into society quite a lot, like throughout the years. And I think it's obviously it's like a sad thing, like why is that? And that's obviously another part of feminism, like the really small nitty gritty bits, like that shouldn't be a thing. But I think it's a subconscious thought for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think for me, it's like my experience will kind of align, but I don't think that's particularly, I personally didn't find something very particularly wrong about, because in my family, males are generally expected to be the ones that are gonna, you know, be the ones who are gonna be the man of the family and all those terms that are discouraged nowadays. But I didn't see anything wrong with that, because for me, it was the, I don't know what exact definition of traditional gender roles is, but whatever that means to anybody. For me, it was the fact that a female is generally going to be the one that's in home, how it used to be, and that's how it was, you know, how it's been pushed into society. And I think at some extent, there's a very negative aura around it, which I disagree with, which I also agree with, that everyone should have an equal, like if a man wants to raise a child, a man should be able to raise a child. And if a female doesn't want to have a child and wants to go have a career, of course she should not, and she shouldn't be the one who has to cook all the time and everything. And I want to ask Ibu if it was the same for him, or how was his experience with that?
I think it's similar, but not that similar, I would say. Of course, there is in the back of everyone's mind, or just in the air, the traditional gender roles once you get married and that kind of thing. But I feel in both sides of my family, from my mother's side, father's side, there's lots of women work from in my family. No, all men do work, but at the same time, the majority of women have a career and still do have a career. So I still, of course, there's still that stereotype, but I feel like not to the point where it's I wouldn't say to that extreme.
And if there's anything Dishti you would like to add, or May, if there's anything you guys like to add, ask, or just anything.
I'm good. May?
Yeah, I'm good as well.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much for being on the podcast. I think it was very nice to have a conversation about. Thank you especially to Dishti and May for being on it. I enjoyed the discussion very much. Hopefully the viewers will like it as well. And look forward to having another one, guys. And you'll be seeing us in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dishti. Thank you, May.
Thank you.